Shri Mathew, Cherian, Dr. Sundeep Salvi, and Professor Asha, Banu, Soletti, my colleagues and dear students. Welcome to this symposium on the occasion of International Day of Older Persons, organized by Center for Aging Studies at IIPS. As you are aware, since 1990, United Nations is observing the International Day for Older Persons, and to create awareness among the public about the issues related to elderly. And also to motivate the policy makers and those who are involved with the welfare of elderly to sensitize them about the changing needs of the elderly and other things. Last year also, Center for Aging Studies organized a symposium on this occasion. Due to the COVID restrictions, it was an online program. Now, today we have the three eminent speakers who has contributed significantly to various aspects of this issue to talk to us on this theme of the resilience of the older persons in a changing world. So let me welcome all of you once again. Our first speaker is Sri Mathew Cherian. Mathew Cherian needs no introduction to those who are in the field of working in the field of elderly and elderly welfare and also voluntary sector. He was the CEO of the HelpAge India for nearly 18 years, and he has contributed significantly to the growth and expansion of the activities of the HelpAge India. In fact, due to his efforts and ideas, in 2020, United Nations Population Award was bestowed on HelpAge India for their contribution for old persons' rights and their welfare. Sri Mathew is by a civil engineer by training from BITS Pilani, and he is an author and development expert. He has set up the Credibility Alliance and GuideStar India for transparency in the voluntary sector. He is also founder of the Charities Aid Foundation of India, and currently he is the Global Ambassador on Aging with HelpAge International. His latest book is on aging and poverty in India, much discussed, which was released 2 years back. And he is also a member of the World Economic Forum Council on Aging and Longevity, and currently the chair of the Care India organization. And before joining the HelpAge India, he was also the director of the Oxfam India. So with his vast expertise in the development sector, close affiliation with the government policies and programs, he will be sharing some of his insights about the welfare and interventions for elderly in India. So thank you so much for coming here for our program today. On behalf of all of you, I request Ms. Aparna Roy to present a bouquet to Sri Mathew Cherian. Our second speaker is Dr. Sundeep Salvi. He is the Director of the Banu Care Research and Education Foundation, or PURE Foundation, based in Pune, earlier known as the Chest Research Foundation. He is a distinguished professor of research at the Symbiosis International University and a visiting professor at the Imperial College, London. He is an expert on respiratory medicine, and according to the Stanford University rankings of the top researchers in the field of respiratory medicine, Dr. Salvi is ranked 79 globally and number 1 in India. He has over 25 Lancet publications, and he is the chair of the chronic respiratory diseases for the global burden of disease in India. and he is also elected president of the Indian Chess Society. He was also collaborating with the Longitudinal Aging Study in India and an expert consultant for the project to carry out the lung function test in India. So thank you, Dr. Salvi, for joining with us. I request Mr. Cherian Prasad to present the bouquet. Our next speaker is Professor Asha Banu Soletti. She is a professor and chairperson of the Center for Health and Mental Health at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Mumbai, and she is also the Dean of Students Affairs at IIPS. He has done extremely a lot of research and field action project in the field of mental health, and the research in the field of understanding and evolving and strengthening the interventions addressing the social determinants of health with a special focus on marginalized communities. And presently she is also heading the major field action project of Pragati, which is located in the tribal pockets in Maharashtra. And she has also done extremely good research in the areas of inequalities in later life, elder abuse and ageism. Also directing many of these projects in the field of elderly welfare and elderly rights. So thank you, Professor Asha Banu, for coming here. I request Ms. Manisha to present a bouquet to Professor K.S. James, Director of the Institute, will be chairing this session. I request Mr. Pankaj to present a bouquet to Professor James. Okay. So thank you all for joining today, and now I request Professor James to give his introductory address. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sekher, Shri, Mathew, Cherian, Dr. Sundeep Salvi, Professor Asha Banu Soletti, Professor Nagarajan, my colleagues and dear students. It's indeed a great pleasure to host three of these eminent scholars who are really working on the issues of aging, on discussing on the theme of International Day of Older Persons or International Day of Senior Citizens. I don't know what should we call it right now, because there is always a confusion whether we should call them elderly, whether we should call them older persons, or whether we should call them senior citizens. But this year's theme is also very important because resilience of older persons in changing world, particularly when we look at in the context of the COVID-19 pandemic and what has really happened over the last few years on the health and well-being of the elderly in this world. As Professor Sekher has told, I think the year 1990, the UN has declared October 1st as the International Day of Older Persons, and we have been celebrating it in every year, especially with the Center for Aging Studies, which has been launched in the Institute a couple of years, maybe perhaps a year before. In between, we have also, maybe 20 years back, there is also UN declaration on the Madrid Action Plan for Aging, which also put forward greater ideas on how do we really look at the issues of aging, how do you really understand the issues of older persons, and also what are the policy framework one has to evolve really to address this major issue, which we believe and which has been rightly told by the previous UN Secretary General that it is this 21st century is expected to be the century of older persons in this world. In addition, we also this decade is also being celebrated by WHO as the decade of healthy aging. So I think there are several things part on to this decade, because decade of healthy aging primarily with a motive to integrate the concerns of aging with the sustainable development goals. There has been criticism in the previously because MDG goals did not really address the issues of aging adequately. But as all of you know, the goal of SDG, particularly the goal of the health goal, the goal 3, specifically told it is meant for health and well-being of all ages. It is not only meant for specific age group, but we have the concerns to be addressed for all the ages. So that way, I think the celebration of Older Persons Day of this decade is very, very significant in terms of ensuring whether it's the healthy aging, whether it is also taking care of their care needs, whether it is addressing the other different aspects, which rightly UN has, also WHO and UN has already told. It's not the question of age, means it's not the question of the issues of age we are addressing here. It is a question of all generations or all the ages that we address, because the issues of older persons are not their own issues, but it's the issues of family, it's also issues of the society, it's all issues of the nations. So that's why I think this has a much more significance. So I'm very, very glad that all the three scholars have really agreed to come over and deliver this important talk, and we look forward to your deliberations in maybe perhaps in 1 or 1.5 hours, because all the students, I'm sure, will immensely benefit from the scholarship all of you possess in these areas. So thank you once again, and I look forward to a meaningful deliberations today. Thank you. Deliver his talk.
Thank you, Dr. James, Dr. Sekher, and professors, teachers at IIPS, students, and my fellow speakers. Actually, a few weeks ago, I was coincidentally got 2 calls, one from Professor Sekher asking me to come here and speak on the interventions of elderly, and the other call was from the Supreme Court asking me to tell what are the interventions which Government of India is doing for the elderly. So both these calls came simultaneously, and I'm here to talk about aging to you and the interventions. Professor Sekher wanted me to speak on the interventions which is happening with elderly. And I'm not going to talk much about the demographics of aging, because you're all experts and you're conducting the Lassie survey, and you're on the anvil of wave 2 of the Lassie. So I will speak more or less on the interventions which are going on the elderly. What has happened with the elderly is we are about 138 million strong. I'm also a senior citizen, and I have no confusion whether it is older persons, elderly, or senior citizens. I'll come to that. And what has happened is there are more women than men in this 138 million, because women are the stronger species, so they outnumber males by almost 6 million. And this is what the data says. You demographers may know better. But at the same time, women living longer resulted in 22 million widows in the country. And these 22 million widows are suffering to a great extent. And though there is longevity, there is not enough health care, there is not enough social security for these elderly. So what happened is, in 1999, Government of India passed the national policy for the older persons, called the NPOP. And in this, they had suggested a few activities like creation of old age homes, mobile medical unit, healthcare, and other welfare measures. But unfortunately, till 2007, nothing much happened in this, other than a few grants were given and few NGOs started old age homes across the country. This continued, and in 2006, HelpAge published its first elder abuse survey. And in the elder abuse survey, it said that 1 in 4 elderly in the country suffered from abuse. And the abuser was none other than the family member. In many cases, or in majority of the cases, it was the son, followed by the daughter-in-law, followed by the daughter. So this was the prevailing situation for the elderly. And it also said that there are millions of elderly living alone with no care by their children due to heavy urban migration as well as rural migration. So the government came up with a maintenance law, which is called the Maintenance of Older Persons Act and Welfare 2007. So this was passed in 2007, and it said that elderly have the right for maintenance. If their children abandon you, you have the right to maintenance. The maintenance law also promised 3 things. It said Government of India will establish 1 old age home in every district of the country. It said that there would be elderly geriatric care in every district in this country. It also proposed to set up 2 institutes called the National Institute of Aging across the country. So this was the proposal under the 2007 Maintenance Act. And in every district there would be maintenance tribunals, and you could complain if your son or daughter-in-law abused you, you could complain. But unfortunately, very few complained, because our Indian culture was such that nobody complained about it. At the same time, what happened was the Government of India during the period of Narasimha Rao passed something called the National Pension Act, which created pension for the older persons. And this was a measly sum of 75 rupees per month, which was given as pension to the older persons. It was only for those who were destitute and those who were living alone. And there was also another scheme which was called Annapurna scheme, which was 10 kg of wheat or rice for those who were destitute. These were the only schemes for the elderly till 2007. Now, after the maintenance law was passed, the Government of India came up with a national program for healthcare of the elderly, NPCHE, which is to create 1 geriatric ward in every district, and there should be training of geriatric doctors, there should be institutes of aging, etc. So this was passed in 2010. And even after 2016, there was very little of movement on this score. And at the same time, the pension was increased to 200 rupees per month. So what happened is, the only pension which was available to destitute older persons was 200 rupees, a little bit of health care, and a maintenance law which said if it is interventions for the elderly, the right to life of elderly is being compromised. And at that stage, Government of India appointed me as Hello. And the Supreme Court appointed me as an amicus curiae to the Supreme Court to advise them on what should be done. Of course, as HelpAge India, we did a survey across the country. Our country has got 707 districts at that point of time. Today we have 747 districts. And what happened is only in about 201 districts was there any semblance of geriatric care or a 10-bedded ward as they promised. And because of the politics in the Institute of Aging, the health minister was from South India. I don't want to name the person. So he said there should be 2 institutes of aging, one in South India and one in North India. So the North Indian one is in AIIMS and the South Indian one is in Chennai. So that is the politics of it. But both of them have not come up. After all this drama, both of them have not come up. The building is there. It's almost like a building under construction, but there is nothing happening inside the building. And if you look at the maintenance law, more than 75% of the districts did not have a maintenance tribunal in place. And in places where maintenance tribunal was there, elderly were also not complaining because it was very difficult to complain, and as a result of it, that law also was not working. And the pension with 200 rupees, which I think is a very undignified amount being paid per month, was continuing, and it was being given to 1.65 crore elderly. This was happening. And my recommendation to the Supreme Court was this pension has to be increased to 2,000 rupees at least. Because what is happening is, in India, at 200 rupees, very few of them can even purchase food and eat. And that is the status of this 200 rupees. So it does not provide, as Article 14 promises, right to life. It only promises undignified life. So as a result of it, the many state governments have increased the pension by putting in their own money. Maharashtra has increased it to 1,000 rupees. Andhra Pradesh has increased to 2,000 rupees. Tamil Nadu has increased it to 2,000 rupees. And Delhi, where I come from, has also increased it to 2,000 rupees. So there has been some movement. And the healthcare, because in the last hearing in the court, the Ministry of Health said that they have expanded geriatric care to 407 districts. I have not gone down to the field because of COVID to check whether this fact is correct or not, but this is the state of our healthcare for older persons. Then in 2010, because of all these dysfunctionality, some of us were appointed to write out a new policy for the elderly called it was called the Policy for Senior Citizens, National Policy for Senior Citizens. That is where the word senior citizen came. We said older persons is undignified, calling somebody Buddha or Buddhi is totally undignified. So let us call them senior citizen. It talks of citizenship, it talks of seniority, so senior citizen. So from 2010 onwards, we have been starting to call everybody as senior citizens, which includes me as well. And so that is how the word senior citizen has come. So many of us who work with the elderly have said from now on we'll call each other senior citizen. We won't use any other word like older persons. And so there was another major development which Helpage India worked on, which I have written in my book, which is Aging and Poverty. Because pensions were not coming, we started forming elder self-help groups in the country. And then subsequently the National Rural Livelihoods Mission accepted this as a path to take up. And now they are contributing 11% of the budget to elder self-help groups. So elder self-help groups have been formed in Bihar, in Uttar Pradesh, in Orissa, many parts, even in Maharashtra, in the Vidarbha region. So this has created an associational movement, and it is providing livelihoods for the elderly. Because when you are old, it doesn't mean that you cannot work. You can still work. You can work till you are 80 years of age. So people are able to work through this National Rural Livelihoods Mission. So subsequently, the Indira Gandhi old age pension, which I talked about, the 200 rupees, was also given to the widows. And the widows of Vrindavan and the widows of Kashi and the widows of Haridwar were living in extreme circumstances. So there was another case filed in the court because some of these widows were being exploited by the caretakers in the old age homes, even in Vrindavan, and the case said these women are being exploited, we need to look at it. Again, the court requisitioned my services, and we have given them a set of recommendations and to create homes where widows can live a safe life. Ultimately, I think only if you have widow remarriage will this epidemic go out of this country, because unless women are allowed to remarry, this practice will continue. And so as a result of it, we advocate remarriage as well. And there are some NGOs which have taken up remarriage of older persons and also trying to give them a second life, if you can. This government, after coming in, has tried to do some changes in the health policy. Of course, they have created an Ayushman Bharat and creating health and wellness centers. And this Ayushman Bharat is an insurance policy where the premium is paid by the government. This is only available to those who register themselves on PMJAY, which is Jan Arogya Yojana. So if you register on that, you will get this insurance scheme. It is working in some places, it is not working in some places. Maybe some of you could evaluate it and look at it. During COVID, the ministry took up some steps and we created a national helpline called 13457 across the country. We also created a portal which is called Sekher, which is re-employment of elderly. When I say we, means along with the government, I served in a committee with the ministry which created these interventions. The third intervention is SAGE, which is called Senior Aging Growth Engine, which is how do we create startups in the elderly domain. So if any of you youngsters want to create a startup, Government of India will give you money and they will give you up to 1 crore as startup capital, and this you can do some intervention and create a startup for the elderly. So these are some new interventions which have come in. So the whole situation is such that elderly still lacks social security. All of you in this room, when you grow old, you're unlikely to get a pension, you're unlikely to have a social security. And I still maintain that all of us need to have a right of social security for all. We also need to have a health for all, because in old age, the most critical intervention which you require is good health. If you do not have good health, and you will not be able to lead a life of your own. And the second thing is, and second but last thing is, you also need children to look after the elderly. So this may be a tall claim, but unless children start looking after the elderly, you don't want your parents to end up in an old age home or to live in a destitute kind of place or live a lonely existence. Because emotional health is all about psychological health. If your children are looking after you and you feel happy, you will lead a long and secure life. So these are some of the interventions which is happening. And so many of you, my advice, parting advice to you would be, look after your own parents so you won't need state intervention, nor will you need other interventions to take place. Thank you.
Wonderful Institute of Population Sciences, and I feel very honored and privileged to be a part of today evening's session on aging and health. All of us have or have had grandparents, and we all know what it means to have grandparents. We have seen them as elderly people, and we have also seen them age over a period of time. We have also seen them suffer from various kinds of ailments, and many of us probably have accompanied them to the hospital or been a part of their treatment. So clearly aging is something that we have to live with, and aging is clearly associated with health related issues. Ever since we are born, the time we are born, the aging process starts from there, and it will end up with what we call as death. So life and death are a cycle that keeps on going round and round and round throughout eternity. This is a wonderful image, isn't it, of a child in the mother's womb, and along with the child is also the death that will accompany the child. And as you see the different phases of the moon, aging is also a very natural process that occurs to all of us. And the last cartoon over here talks about how we grow with time, we reach a peak, and then we slowly decline over a period of time. So aging is a normal process that all of us go through. Whether you're Isaac Newton or whether you're Albert Einstein, no scientist could ever find a solution for aging. Everybody wants to be immortal, but the sad truth is all of us age, no matter what. If you look at the population pyramid of India, compare the 2001 population pyramid versus the 2026, the anticipated population pyramid, you can see a big difference, isn't it? So in 2001, the total population of people above the age of 60 was very small, 5-6%, perhaps maybe a little more than that. But by 2026, that number is anticipated to be quite big. The shape of the pyramid has changed. India has always been considered to be a young country, where we have more and more and more of young people. And that's the asset that our country has. But the sad reality is, over a period of time, that is going to change. And we are going to become a country which is going to host a lot of the senior citizens and the elderly people, our own parents. We are going to grow old with time. By 2050, 20% of India's population is anticipated to be above the age of 60 years. That's how this aging is going to change. The entire dynamics, the population dynamics of aging is going to change over a period of time. Now, India being a very large country, a very heterogeneous and a very diverse country, every state is different from every other state. And therefore, aging is going to be very different across different states. And as you can see in the last graph over here, perhaps you may not be able to see from your distance, but Kerala is a state that is going to have the most number of the elderly people. Then is Tamil Nadu, then Himachal Pradesh, and then Punjab and so on. So obviously, it's because of the geographical location, because of nutrition, because of quality of air, because of customs and so on, the states are going to have very different challenges for aging related issues in our country. If you look at it from a global perspective, the blue line over here represents the age which is less than 6 years. The red line represents the age which is less than 6 years, and the blue line represents the age more than 60 years. And you can see how that shift is happening, the transition is happening between young and the aging population. The developed countries have a bigger proportion of the elderly population. So for example, if you look at the United States or if you look at Europe, then about close to 25% of the population is already above the age of 60. Whereas if you look at Africa, it's a single digit figure of around 5 to 6%. India is somewhere in the middle at around 11 to 12%. So as the countries become richer and richer, as the aging, as the wealth accumulates, you will live for a longer period of time, and therefore you will have more elderly people living within the society. So those are the challenges that we would encounter as we become richer and richer, because people will live for longer and longer, and that will create more elderly people. Now, aging is a process that has been shown to be because of various biological phenomena inside the human body. So genetic instability, the day you're born, your genes are being programmed that you're going to live for such a long period of time. There's a finite period of time where you can live. It is very unlikely that you will live for more than 100 years. If at all you do, it's just a chance that is very, very rare. But that's because of your genetic makeup. The genes that control our life are programmed to survive for that period of time. Then the environmental factors that we are associated with, be it the type of food that we eat, be it the quality of air that we breathe, be it the surroundings in which we live, they also have a big impact on the aging process. So there are various mechanisms, biological mechanisms that have been suggested to contribute to the aging process. And no scientist has yet been able to find a solution for halting these cellular processes that are associated with aging. So it's a clock. Once it starts counting downwards or backwards till you end your life. Now the organ that is probably that ages the fastest is the lung, and that's where my specialty comes from. Being a pulmonologist, I have been associated with various lung disorders or lung diseases, both in young as well as the elderly. But the lung is an organ that comes in contact with 10,000 liters of air every day. We have to breathe 10,000 liters of air to keep ourselves fit and well. Out of the 10,000 liters of air that we breathe, the lungs, they soak in about 1,000 liters of oxygen. And that is the requirement of the human body, 1,000 liters of oxygen to keep ourselves fit and well. Now, because it has to do such amazing piece of work, the air that we breathe, 10,000 liters of air, comes in with a lot of pollutants, microbes, bacteria, viruses, fungi, you name it. And over a period of time, they keep on causing damage to the lung. And that stimulates what we call as the aging process. Nobody so far has been shown to have an immortal lung, or a lung that just remains fit and well for a long period of time. The best we have from a lung aging perspective is the physiological aging of the lung, and a lung can take you up to 120 years. After 120 years, the lung cannot cope up by giving you life. So that's what we call as physiological aging, and that's what limits the survival of 120 years. There are many diseases that we have in our population that are associated with accelerated aging. So, for example, there's a disease called COPD, or chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. It was earlier believed to be a disease caused by tobacco smoking, but now we know that COPD is also caused by a whole host of other environmental factors, whether it be ambient air pollution, if you're living in cities and towns, from motor vehicles, industrial sources, or occupational exposures, or whether you're living in the rural areas, indoor air pollution, from the burning of biomass fuel, wood, kerosene, animal dung. The smoke that comes out of it is known to cause damage to the lung and create a disease called COPD. COPD is the second leading cause of death and the second leading cause of disability-adjusted life years in India. So, one disease that is going to accelerate the aging process in our country is this disease called COPD. And something that we need to start worrying about, because we have been doing a lot of research on our lung health. So we did a survey amongst young people like you all who are sitting in this hall to understand what is the lung health of people from our country. And about half of them, 50%, showed evidence of damage to the small windpipes, even when they have never smoked in their life. It's all because of the quality of air that we breathe and so on. So our lungs are very, very, because of the quality of air that we breathe, our lungs get damaged a lot. And therefore, one of the most common diseases that we will see in the elderly over a period of time are chronic lung diseases that include COPD. Asthma is another disease that is also associated with aging process. The next organ that is associated with aging is the heart. So the heart is an amazing pump that pumps 10,000 liters of blood every single day. against a very high pressure of 120 millimeters of mercury. Now this organ, this pump also ages with time, and as you grow over the age of 60 years, the heart becomes bigger in size, becomes weaker in size, and this becomes an organ that then limits your survival period. So aging process occurs in the heart as well. Ischemic heart disease, hypertension are some of the common diseases that we encounter in the elderly that is associated with poor health. Brain is the next organ that has been shown to be aged, that ages with time. There are some beautiful images over here. On the left is a young adult, green leaves. The second is, well, normal physiological aging process. And the third is accelerated aging. So your trees, they lose a lot of the leaves, and what you are left with only the branches, and therefore the ability to, the cognition, ability to think also goes down dramatically over a period of time. A lot of research has shown that the brain function declines very rapidly after the age of around 65 or so. And a large portion of that is because the input that comes to the brain is also reduced, and therefore there is a realization that we need to keep on stimulating the brain with a lot of activities for the elderly. The kidney is another organ that ages, and we know that the kidney plays a very important role in excretion of substances, and therefore if your body is unable to excrete some of these so-called harmful substances, then as they keep on building up, they keep on accelerating your aging process. We all know that aging is associated with skin, so your skin becomes wrinkled, it becomes less tight as what we see in the young age. Then you can see the cataract is also an aging process. The muscles also start becoming weak. There are fractures of the bone, as you can see here in that X-ray that I've shown. And then there are spinal changes that also are associated with aging. So clearly these are the health impacts that are associated with aging that we commonly see in our own family members. Now, what are the determinants of healthy aging? Aging is going to be a normal process anyways. Now, how can we age graciously and how can we age healthily? There are so many factors that have an impact on that. You can see the inner circle, which is red or dark brown in color, and those are the core factors that are associated with healthy aging. So your age, your gender, your educational qualifications, that makes a big difference. Your health behavior, the family size, mental makeup, whether you have any associated disease states, nutrition are the core factors that determine how healthy you're going to age. And then the outer circle are the other factors, the secondary factors of secondary importance. The environment, the health and social services, the educational level, housing, poverty, educational opportunities, employment, social status of community, diet, and so on. And then you see a third circle which is outside of that: economic opportunity, urbanization, development trends, religious factors, and so on, cultural patterns and beliefs and so on. So these are all factors that contribute to aging, and healthy aging is accounted for by all these factors. We need to be prepared for the growing aging population in our country. As I showed you the figures, aging population is going to double, almost double in the forthcoming years, and we need to be well prepared for it right from now. What all can be done? Well, healthy aging, these are the factors that, as I said, have a big contribution for healthy aging. Cognitive training, exercise, diet, spiritual life, and counseling are important determinants, and we need to start working on these interventions that are so very important to have a healthy aging life. The other factors are seen on the circle over there inside. Be physically active. So we talk about exercise. It's so important. How do you make these elderly people become more physically active? Lower their blood pressure, lower their blood sugar levels, stop smoking, or other exposure to other environmental factors, and so on. Just because you are here, and I wanted to share with you some of the important environmental factors that are likely to have a big impact. Mosquito coil, for example. One mosquito coil that we burn is day for the older people. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sundeep. And it's just been wonderful listening to you on the health issues which we face at the during World Health. All of us have to face it, so it is really encouraging to understand what are the issues behind it. So let me now call upon Prof. Asha, Banu, Soletti to give the floor.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Professor Sekher, for inviting me to this symposium, and also a little jittery because I consider the previous two speakers as stalwarts, and also Professor James, because I've read a lot of his work to write my paper. So, I'm really honored to be part of this panel, and I will start my presentation. And also, again, I'm a little nervous because I just realized I'm smoking 500 cigarettes per day. I always thought that, I'm not even a passive smoker because I resist people smoking around me. But this is a sudden realization. I've been smoking in a different form. So, after COVID, we've been talking. I come from the Center for Health and Mental Health, and I'm rooted in innovating community-based models to promote mental health, and that's my expertise. But as a blessing in disguise, during COVID, everyone started talking about mental health, and everyday newspaper had mental health, related concerns, and there are counseling centers, helplines that have been announced all through the times of COVID. And in fact, I was hospitalized recently, and on the third day, there was a psychologist who was connected to me on the phone to check whether I am in touch with the family, I am feeling okay, what is my current emotion, etc. So that's the level of awareness that everyone should be in touch with their emotion, and we have to speak about mental health, etc. So why do we keep talking about this demographic shift? And two particular points that I will add here, which is highlighted in the integrated program for older person, is that there are lots of social consequences, and aging has become a major social challenge. So there is a need to provide economic and health needs of the elderly and to create around the senior citizens. But there are multiple domains. When we talk about health, the healthcare is a huge need for the senior citizens. Mental health needs are huge for the citizens. But how families are equipped and prepared to take care of the senior citizens is also something we need to talk about. While we are saying that family and the family in transition, as well as the various social challenges because of multiple insecurities thrown at the older adults, as the second speaker spoke, it's also aging and aging-related diseases and disabilities. Now, because of the medical advancement, there is longevity, but then what is the quality of life because of the longevity is also something we need to look at. And physical health influences mental health. When we are talking about longevity, and when people are having morbidity, disease-related morbidity, disability relating to age concerns, it's also very important to look at how physical health influences mental health, because the interrelatedness, the interconnectedness is shown across multiple studies. It's vice versa. Physical health influences mental health, and mental health also influences physical health. Now, when we are talking about all these dimensions, we also know that there are several documents. Even WHO has acknowledged that depression and dementia as major public mental health concerns, and anxiety in old age is also becoming a common concern in the recent past. So, this is always something which we say to the student. When we are saying depression, when we are saying anxiety, it becomes mental health concerns or mental disorders. So when we always talk mental health, we think mental health is synonymous to mental illness, but it is not. And often I tell to the students Now because of the increased awareness, everyone come and say, I'm very anxious. Nobody says, I'm tensed. Nobody comes and says, I'm sad. Everyone says, I'm depressed. So that's the level of wellness. But I always say, you always should start with tension. You always start with sadness because there is, kind of intensity. So we have to really understand that mental health is not synonymous to mental illness. And mental health is a broad-based definition, and the WHO has defined mental health as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community. We really sit and deconstruct this definition to say, in order to promote well-being, these are the dimensions that we need to take care of, and there are different marginalized groups who are not able to achieve this and their well-being is getting compromised. And the same is the case with the elderly as well, because we will see in the subsequent slides. Now, drawing from the WHO definition, these are the multiple dimensions. Now, these three are very interrelated and very true to senior citizens. We are looking at mental health. The mental health means its sense of coherence, experience of understanding and managing stressors. All of us are aware of what is a stressor, right? Stressor is anything that bothers us. And there is something like acute stress and there is something like chronic stress. And now when we are looking at narratives of older adults, we can see that most of them live with chronic stress. And when there are no supportive mechanisms, it results. It's like resilience is like a rubber band. They cope, and at a point in time the rubber band breaks and there is a mental health concern. When there is a mental health concern, there is also paucity of services and also lack of understanding of what is going on with the older adult. Often, everything is connected to old age. People are getting forgetful, it is connected to old age. People are sad, they will say, oh, this is a senior citizen, very grumpy and cynical. Nobody wants to connect it to depression. There is a urinary health issue, there is an interrelatedness to depression, but people will still treat for UTI. So there is so many linkages between mental health and physical health. And in one of my paper, which I wrote with my student, we interviewed many doctors to understand, do they assess abuse, do they assess any other reasons or causes associated with the ailment. The doctors said no. Most of the doctors in the private hospitals in the vicinity said that they do not look for any reasons. So it's very important to look and understand stressors when the senior citizens report to hospital. That doesn't happen. And there is physical health. I think adequately physical health has been discussed, and there is this social health where we see this interdependence, mutual reliance on and responsibility to others within society, which is really going for a toss. Now, when these three major domains are interconnected, that there are also certain overlapping constructs which we have to look at. One is autonomy, and all of us know how autonomy is very important for our own self-esteem. That is capacity for control over oneself. Even an adolescent in today's context think that they need to have a say in what they want to study, what they want to wear. I still remember my mother will pick my dress, but today my nieces who are as young as 5 years, they will pick their own color because they want to have their own autonomy and agency. But then in the current context with limited resources, where is autonomy for older adults in most of the families? We really negate this construct. Then sense of us, capacity for relating to and with others. Because of the shrinking circle and because of lack of services, people do not come and bond. In certain communities, people do come and bond, but in certain communities, people are housebound. There are several reasons for being housebound. In Mumbai, I have really noticed how buildings without lift, the senior citizens are locked in their home because they cannot climb up, down. How there are several barriers for even connecting to the own community or to see friends or to even do their routine in terms of going to temple, churches, etc. And there is control, that is capacity for navigating social spaces. This in one of these sessions long ago, I've heard the first speaker speaking on age-friendly society and how far we are. It was long ago in one of the conferences. When I visited one of the Swedish country, I realized what it means to control your own life. Even if I'm on wheelchair, I was able to take a public transportation. I can go buy my grocery or I go visit my doctor and come back. But here in the Indian context, the senior citizen has to wait for their children to take them to a hospital or even navigate them to even the familiar spaces. I'm not generalizing all the elderly, but when there is dependence for the elderly, then it becomes really important to wait for somebody, and because of all of this, the agency of the senior citizens gets compromised. So this is one frame I always look at to define mental health, and this particular model, when we look at, we really can understand what are some of the interventions we can decide, and also it gives clarity on what are some of the factors influencing mental health, keeping all those constructs in mind. Now, at the individual level, these are some of the stressors that are very unique for elderly. All of us have stressors, but then we have our ability to navigate through those stressors. We have the awareness to navigate. We have access, but unfortunately, when there are limited resources, even senior citizens avoid to access resources. I keep asking my mother, do you want to do this? She will say, I don't want to waste any resources. During COVID time, we did a rapid telephonic interview with all the senior citizens who are in the slum communities. Most of them said that they are feeling very guilty that they are living through this stress because most of their daughter-in-laws are out of job, the sons are out of job, and they are eating what the younger generation deserves to eat. So this is the kind of internalized stereotype senior citizens live with, and this is actually a chronic stress in all communities. And I'm really interested to look at aging and poverty book of yours because I see this living in chronic stress forever and how it influences mental health. So retirement, bereavement, loneliness, lack of confidence, low self-esteem, declining physical health, these are all some of the stressors which are very unique for senior citizens. And for some senior citizens with disability, it is about mobility-related issues, fear of crime, and extreme dependence on caregivers. The third is elderly being patronized and infantilized. So this is something, this is a recent observation. I am a qualitative researcher, and sometimes you tend to even hear something that's very, you're closely connected to. Recently I visited my hometown, and I was just telling my mom something, and she said, please stop this because I don't want to go anywhere or do anything. So I was just looking at her, what happened? She said, no, senior citizens do not get the respect that they have to get the respect. I said, what do you mean? She said, even when you are going to a shop, the shopkeeper is going to look at you and say, this is the bill, here is the bill. I'm standing with you, he doesn't look at me or talk to me. And exactly this particular description happened on the same day when I went to a shop. The bill was given to me, and the product was purchased by my mother. And I looked at the shopkeeper and asked, but there are two of us standing here, what made you to look at me and give this? He was taken aback, he did not have a response. He said, I thought you are paying for this. So these are the kind of, and that has really bothered my mother, that she said that this is the state. But unless until she articulated, I would not have realized this at all. Because it's like a very, we call it as microaggression. And she has experienced this, but because I am not wearing her shoes, I would not have realized it. She would not have communicated that to me. She said, this is not one place, wherever you go, this is how senior citizens are infantilized, where decisions are made. Or sometimes she has even pointed that as children, you are in the name of care infantilizing me, but I know how to take care of myself. So there are interesting observations that we can make in our own families and surroundings that way. And then changing family dynamics. The power dynamics also shifts often. Lack of purpose. This is also articulated by many senior citizens. There is nothing like to look forward to. There is this tribal project. Even lack of purpose is articulated by senior citizens in urban spaces. But this is located in Agai. That's the Pragati project. When we visited the community, because of seasonal migration, the entire men folk have migrated to Bhiwandi, and the women have gone to the local fields to do some daily labor. And the senior citizen was mentioning, we get up, we eat, we sleep, and we are looking up at the sky, and we are waiting for the destiny to take our lives over. So basically there is energy, and that's why the elderly self-help group is such an important intervention, that there is some stimulus and some purpose we keep giving, because there is energy and there is interest in engaging, but then because of their social location, when they are not able to have some purpose in life, that also leads to mental health concerns. Then most of the senior citizens go through this is economic insecurity, and we don't have coverage of senior citizen pension in the country. At the community level, it is lack of resources and facilities. When we go to mall, we can find spaces for children to play, but then there will be no places for senior citizens to sit. And that's the kind of age-unfriendly environment we are in. Even if we want to take. Now, thankfully, as part of tokenism, people keep talking about disability, so there is wheelchair and there are ramps. So the mobility is there. But still, there is nothing like a dedicated space, like a reading space or anything in common spaces. Access to resources also is a challenge because of multiple reasons which I have told. And formal and informal support mechanisms, which is also like informal as family caregivers, we were there. Now as family also is going through transition, so much of a migration, shifting power dynamics. We are relying on formal, but formal also is not affordable for many of the senior citizens in the country. Stigma and stereotypes and internalized stereotypes, that this is possible, this is not possible. There are some of the media campaigns that are coming to break the stereotypes, which is a positive sign. And we can see this internalized stereotype often. Can I do something like this? No, I am old enough. I cannot explore new things. Even in terms of marriage, supporting marriages in old age, that has its own challenges in the cultural context. In our cultural context, because it's associated with property, it's associated with children's consent, and I am really old, I cannot get married, what others will think. And this is one dimension, but there are several aspects where you can see stereotypes around older adults. I often ask in one of the courses where we talk about aging, I always ask the students in the class, what comes to your mind when you think of older adults? So they will think and they will say grumpy, rude, dependent, sick, unwell. Then I ask, okay, after a few minutes I say, so how many of you are grandparents, so what do you have to say? Then suddenly they will say good food, love, care. So when it comes to family, we have a particular notion, but when you are looking at community and larger generalized way of looking at, we see grumpy, slowed down, etc. So I always see how perceptions, and these are all the stereotypes we hold. Now when we are looking at a personal attachment, we have a different story to say, but when we are saying, generally in community and elder, these are the stereotypes we hold. Policy sometimes unable to comprehend the diversity and the diverse needs. So that's also something, because it's such a heterogeneous group, ranging from people who are bubbling with energy to contribute to people who are requiring palliative care, who are housebound, bedridden, etc. And the next important area that I keep working on is ageism and elder abuse. So in this I always follow Helpage India's thing, and in that also again I will put this question to myself, if family is really supported, whether abuse will minimize. That's a hypothesis in my head. Sometimes it may be helplessness, it may be like being overburdened. So I always see this one part that interventions and policy should take care is how families should be really supported in caring for the older adults. Because when we are saying family as the safety net, how do we bridge this, that older senior citizen care, and what kind of provisions or training or capacity building, and how we can work family as a unit in promoting the care. Then increasing healthcare costs, which already covered, and then rights. This is another favorite area of mine, rights and duty. When it comes as a child, we all of us expect that this is our right. Education is a right. Parents have to provide private education, go to international universities, to marriage. Not only that, I am still astonished that people will go for ear piercing of their first child, marriage, etc. All that comes under a rights basket, and people demand including property transfer. But when it comes and the care gets reversed, it always becomes duty. So when we are looking at all of these which are happening around us, what are some of the rituals or ceremonies or celebrations that senior citizens have been enjoying as a privilege in the olden day has diminished? Because this is a kind of discord. When as children we enjoy all our rights, when we want to do it back to the parents, it becomes like obligatory and dutiful. It becomes a duty. And also, when we are saying it as a right, then there should be provisions. Like for example, if right to education, there are schools. But then if right to parental care, what are some of the systems that have to be in place so that the family also can be taken for task if they are not able to provide this? This thought also came because I was invited, maybe have attended hundreds and hundreds of marriages, hundreds and hundreds of functions that are organized for children. But in this many decades, I've just attended one function. I don't know the name, but then it is about celebrating the 1,000th moon. It's like 80th birthday. It's a 80th birthday of the senior citizen. I've attended just only one, where the family, that's basically to get all the children and the grandchildren under one roof, to seek the blessing of that senior citizen, and to also meet and say, by that I have attended only one. And I never even knew such a festival or celebration was existing. So these are all thoughts for us that how certain times care is becoming lopsided and we receive care, and when it comes to parental care, it becomes obligatory. So while I discussed in the previous slide that we have to look at holistic mental health, yes, clinical, there is a psychiatrist, there are psychologists, there are trained mental health professionals, but again, when it comes to stressors, it relies on all of us as practitioners and development workers, and how do we focus on mental health care. So this is one framework I found in the paper, the reference is still there. It's maintaining mental capacities, how we facilitate senior citizens performing daily activities, relieving symptoms of distress, and also maintaining level of independence leads to dignity of life. So this is one framework of mental health care for older people, and this can be done context specific in different spaces as well. Now, while I said that framework, these are also some of the promotion initiatives that we can do, that is mapping existing services and its influence on mental health. It is not that we don't have services, we have services, but how do we map and also make it accessible for senior citizens? Social support intervention, how to enhance safety net in communities, like some of the programs that the first speakers spoke. It's very good to create that safety net in communities. And I'm truly appreciative of the fact that ESIG, we are also experimenting in our rural community how intergenerational bonding also can happen through the formation of elderly self-help group, where there is purpose, where there is value, where there is transfer of information to the younger generation. Promoting volunteering and career support. Now I think the SACRID is one platform which is very good, and that has to be really visibilized. Then elder abuse prevention programs. Elder abuse prevention, primary health care, and any medical facility should have, like domestic violence, how doctors are attuned to it. But then in our country still this is not happening in most of the places, and invest more on creating centers, avenues for senior citizens, and creating conducive spaces within existing mechanisms like police stations or existing counsellors. Again, as part of the same paper, when I asked counsellors, this was again 7 years ago, that paper came out 7-8 years ago, most of the counselors said that they don't have a paper on geriatric counseling. But now there are counseling programs that have introduced geriatric counseling as well. So policy recommendations: stop discrimination by age. Charity welfare approach should be shifted to rights framework. Rights framework in the sense adequate systems have to be established. Capture the heterogeneity amongst older adults. Facilitate access of older people for counseling. Promote and increase social participation of older people. Ensure that vulnerable risk groups are reached by special programs. Promote personal autonomy and possibilities for independent living to the fullest possible extent. Thank you so much.
For the students, and if someone is there to, yeah, okay. Maybe because I think Mathew has to leave now because he has an 8 o'clock flight to catch. So maybe we can, in case you have questions, we can address to him first and then we can come back to the others. So any questions, any suggestions or comments? You have to raise your hands, otherwise it's not possible for me to see from here.
Thank you, sir, for the introduction. My question is related to the intervention that you are talking, particularly the intervention after the aging. But I wanted to know whether there is a provision or there is any intervention from the government side on the community basis or the school-going children about the aging process. Okay, whether there is any intervention on the children because they are going to treat their parents. So whether we have any information on that.
Actually, there are no interventions from the government, except that there will be in your textbooks some stories of Shravan and some stories about people looking after older people. And but HelpAge India as an organization has been going to schools and colleges talking about intergenerational learning and love for your parents, and also taking them to old age homes on visits so that they can look at the other side and see how it is happening. So barring that, I don't see much of it happening. And my impression, I've gone to many schools and colleges. After 9th standard in school, most children have a deficit in their attention, so they're not able to even concentrate for more than 5 to 6 minutes. And today with the arrival of the cell phone, when I go to colleges, most of them are busy with their cell phones and not interested in listening to these kind of talks or lectures, etc. So whatever you have to do, do it by 8th standard. After that, you have lost them completely.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, Manoj. That should be the last question for.
Sir, I've been to Tamil Nadu for a field work about 20 years back. At that time, they started stating that with the fertility level being lower, they wanted to introduce the mental health and other programs in their facilities, health facilities, especially the government health facilities. But since you are in touch with the government as well as with the Supreme Court and other cases, I just wanted to put this. That time, sir, they wanted to give a mental health program into their facility. But however, the things were not in perception because it was a centrally controlled, or the funding has to be introduced from the central government. Therefore, they could not introduce many of the programs which they have visualized. This is one aspect of it. The other aspect is that about whatever you said, the geriatric centers which the state government has to create, which is the health is a aspect of the state government specifically. The fund comes from the central government. So these two aspects are not coming together at some times, which I think that it is not coming together where the state government want to implement, some of the state government want to implement, where the fertility is lower in some of the state government, but will not be able to be possible because of some restrictions within the structure. I hope that the entire structure should be refabricated, reframed to implement some of the orders, like from the reproductive child health to be transferred to the youth, adolescents, and then the older age. That should come at certain stages, which I think is missing in the country like India. So I think we need to be visualizing on those factors rather than accepting the structure as it is. It's why we can put.
I agree with you because there is state list, there is central list, and there is concurrent list. So what happens is education and health falls under the state list. So central can make an allocation under the National Health Mission or under the National Health Program for Elderly. State governments have to implement it. And they can add funds to it, or they can, even in education, they can also add funds into their programs. But what is happening is, today most state governments, unless they sell enough liquor, they do not have revenue to run their own state budgets. One of the biggest contribution is liquor bills. I come from Delhi. Delhi survives on selling liquor. So if the liquor is not sold, then the state will not have budget. So there is a revenue. There is I think 14th Finance Commission has sat over it. I think many commissions have sat over it, but they have not solved this problem. That is the first part of it. But actually, if you feel for it, like Kerala is one state which wanted to implement age-friendly Kerala. So what they did is, they did not start in schools or they did not start in colleges. They went straight to the panchayats. They said, we will make every panchayat in the country, in the state, age-friendly panchayat. So every panchayat has a daycare center, every panchayat has got Kudumba Shri groups, it has this group and that group. So they started working at community level itself. So that is how they have been able to implement the age-friendly Kerala program. And the funds come from the central government, from the Panchayati Raj Ministry. So Panchayati Raj Ministry passes it on to every state. But some panchayats, as you know, don't work. So as a result of it, we are not able. But I agree with you, sir, that you will have to concentrate on how this revenue sharing is determined. Otherwise, states are mostly paupers. Most state governments don't have money. So that is the situation. I will stop here and I'll have to excuse all of you because I'll have to leave for the airport, so I won't be able to answer more questions. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mathew. Yeah.
Aspect for the elderly. As we see, we have seen, since we went through these slides, we have seen numerous points on the community participation, individual participation and so on. But the increasing trend is the media. Especially in every household, be it rural or urban, there is a TV and both elderly, grandparents, everyone watches the TV. However, there are channels for kids, there are channels for elderly, there are channels for news. Can there be any direction by the government to have a channel for elderly? There is one direction of spirituality, but that is not a fulfilling one. That is somewhat, I would say, is a distorted one. Can there be any thought? I would like to just stimulate the students also in this part. Can there be, like we have certifications, U certifications, A certifications and so on. So can there be any certification or any thought on this?
I truly do not know because again, as I said, we have our stereotypes. When you said age friendly, my senior citizens and channel, I was also thinking of religious. Then I said no, this is a stereotype because we are bracketing senior citizens means it should be religious.
but I'm not sure. But there are definitely programs which speaks about geriatric health nowadays. People do come and talk, but there are programs in regular channels. I'm not sure whether a separate channel is going to promote, but then in existing channels, programs where entire family watches also will be really great. Because with children also, people are saying nowadays this channel is definitely detrimental to the mental health of children. It's not positive.
You had given a lot of thoughts for us on the very important dimensions of aging, and I thank all of them, and in a very short invitation they came and delivered the lecture here, and really very informative talk on all the three dimensions of the speakers. And Professor Sundeep, you have really given a shock for us. We know the impact of this mosquito coil, but the extent of the impact was not known, and we don't know how to convey this agarbatti effect to the people. It is very difficult for me to convey within my house, and how to tell to our parents and relatives and to the community. I don't know, maybe some initiatives are there to convey this to the community, because we are all exposed to that. And yeah, so it's very informative. Thank you so much. And Professor Asha, Banu, you really, you have shown your expertise in mental health aspects, almost a lot of dimensions you have covered. Thank you so much. And I also take this opportunity to thank Professor James for helping us in organizing this activity, and Professor Sekher, particularly took the initiative to organize this lecture and contacting all of you and inviting me. I also thank all the students and research scholars who participated in this. Thank you so much. Some of you have come from other institutions. Thank you so much, and I also thank all of the staff.